Outer Wilds is my favorite game of all time. It was completely different from any other video game I had played. When I talked to the friendly Hearthian NPCs, I was expecting them to tell me what I needed to do, but rather they asked me what I was going to do. Never has a game done that for me. In fact, calling this a game at all doesn't even do it justice. Life doesn't give you a directive. I'm not talking about society though. Society will give you plenty of things to keep you busy. I'm talking about real living life, those moments sitting around a campfire with your friends. You have the choice to leave, or you have the choice to stay. Outer Wilds taught me to treasure those moments. So in that way, Outer Wilds is the most realistic game I've ever played. And then I played the DLC and was frightened to the core. The DLC just absolutely blew me away. It had the same feeling that Outer Wilds did, but felt very original in its own way too. Entering the dark world for the first time had me almost quit the game and look up where the jump scares were, but despite my fear, I pressed onward. The sections of stealth where the mysterious strangers are just breathing down your neck were almost more than I could handle. But although it seems like everything is against you in this strange world, there's one thing that lights the path ahead for you, and that is the artifact. The design of the artifact quickly stuck with me. The 5 prongs sticking out the front, the ring-like structure with the flame in the middle, it all felt so unique from just a regular lantern. A while after I beat the DLC, I was looking through Etsy's selection of Outer Wilds creations. One creator and their creation caught my eye. They had made a one-to-one replica of the artifact with a working flame. Their name is Melanum 3D. If you like Outer Wilds stuff, I highly recommend checking out some of their work. But there was one thing that this artifact and other artifact replicas were missing for me. I wanted it to feel as immersive as possible. I wanted to be able to control it like in the game, you know, with the prongs moving to change it from being a lantern into a flashlight. But no such thing existed. Except I have a 3D printer. I have experience designing 3D models and painting them. I've made some crappy robots before. How hard could it be? The main focus of this project for me was the moving prongs in the front, so that's what I decided to tackle first. There are multiple ways that I could have made the prongs move back and forth, but for the sake of simplicity, I just went with 5 microservos all connected to the same signal. It's been a bit since I've worked on electronic stuff, so I tried to jog my memory by hooking up a single servo to a button, and hey, what do you know, I still got it. Arduino is usually my go-to for simpler projects, but with how little space I have to work with, the Raspberry Pi Pico ended up being much more compact. But this was just one. I needed 4 more, and having to manage all the connections on a breadboard might have been the end of me. I ended up soldering these connectors that I got to a proto board. I've done a bit of soldering before, but holy smokes, I did not think it was going to be this frustrating. I know I probably should have just looked up a tutorial for soldering on proto boards, but my pride got the best of me, and it took way longer than it should have. Well, an hour later and my jerry-rigged servo controller was finished. So the electronics are done, now I need to do the mechanics. I went online and found the exact in-game model that the artifact uses and imported it into Fusion. Most of the modeling work was pretty boring. The main parts were having to design a case for the microservos, which took a few prototypes until I was happy with it. I had to tinker with each prong so that I could have a servo horn attached to it, and I had to slice a little bit off the side to make room for the other servos. Alright, first test of the mechanical artifact. Here's what that looks like. That's freaking sweet. The next step was to add the lighting both for the flame and the LEDs in the front. This proved to be more of a challenge than I had originally thought. Firstly, these tiny LEDs weren't going to cut it anymore. I believe they are designed to be used as indicator lights. They didn't shine nearly as bright enough for a lantern. I found these green 3-watt LEDs on Amazon, but when they arrived, they were a lot smaller than I had imagined. I mean, surely these wouldn't be nearly bright. They'll work. Now that all the electronics were done, I moved everything that was on the breadboard to another perf board. Just like last time, I completely underestimated how long this would take. Nearly 5 hours of planning the circuit, soldering everything into place, and troubleshooting later, and this is what I ended up with. It's very crude, so I just hid it under a bunch of electrical tape. So far I've been using a portable charger to power it, but I found this small battery module that fit perfectly for the project. And now comes the time that I've been dreading. I was going to have to fit all of this stuff inside somehow. Now the issue with this is that 3D prints have infill to keep them structurally stable. I thought that maybe I can model out tubes and empty spaces inside the frame of it, but I realized quite quickly that it would be an absolute nightmare trying to route cables where they need to go. I thought maybe I can make the model hollow in Fusion, but the Fusion hollowing tool couldn't figure out how to do it. Then I realized something. You can just turn off the infill in the printer slicer. Now this makes our model hollow, but there's still no way to access the inside. To solve this, I split the model down the middle and placed them face down and disabled bottom surfaces. This way it prints cleanly and I can also access the inside. To connect the pieces, I modeled holes for an M5 screw to slot into. I'm hoping that they aren't too obvious in the final result. Now that I figured all of that out, I printed the bottom part out as a test, and this is how it looks. Also, I caught one of the LEDs smoking. It's probably from how much current is going through it. I'll have to figure that out later. I think I'm confident enough now that I can print the whole thing. And even though there were some hiccups during it, it turned out amazing. As cool as this thing is right now, there's still one more thing that needs to be done, and that's my favorite step, painting. So I have a bit of experience painting 3D models. I've made a couple of 3D Catan boards before this, but I've never painted anything to look metallic. I usually paint the whole thing using acrylic, but this time I'm going to try doing the base coat with spray paint. Fortunately, my dad already had some gold metal spray paint. Of course, you always want to test how it looks first before committing to it, so before I did this, I tested it on a mini version. It turns out there was just enough paint left in the can to coat the whole thing. It would have been really bad if we were just short, because apparently they don't even make this specific spray paint anymore. So although I had planned to do 2 coats of spray painting, I guess I'll have to just stick with 1. For the acrylic paint details, I went with a raw umber color. Painting a 3D model of any kind usually isn't that hard. For the most part, the places that need to be painted jut out of the model, almost like a color by number puzzle. But there were some decals that weren't a part of the 3D model. For these parts, I had to look back and forth between the reference and the model to see where I needed to paint, but soon enough the base details were done. Now comes the final step of painting, which is my favorite part. To give the artifact a rusted metallic look, I use a technique called a wash. This is where you mix black paint together with equal parts water and cover the whole thing with it. What happens is this black, half liquidy paint will rest in the crevices or the shadows of the model. Then you dab the surface with a paper towel. The top parts will have their paint soaked up, but the crevices will stay black. This gives the model a ton of depth and makes it look so much more interesting. All that's left now is to give the whole thing a layer of clear coat and let it dry overnight. This project took about a month of work, which is usual for this kind of thing, but I do not regret the time spent on this because it turned out just how I imagined. That's all. Thanks for staying.